This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Saturday show. We're broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and of course our Roku, part of the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. I am Jamie Pags, the Philly sports guy, filling in for Mac. Jack should be here in just a second. I'm not exactly sure what happened there. Sometimes technical difficulties take precedent here, but hopefully he'll be able to log in very quickly, and we'll get started with our debate show. A lot of things happening in the world of sports today. I'm going to go ahead and kind of get started here just a little bit. It's hard to do a debate show when you have nobody to debate, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the things that happened yesterday. Obviously, for all those people up in New York, I am going up to the Phillies game, and the Phillies Mets series started off kind of like where it ended last time, where the Mets actually went out and got up to a 7-run lead, wound up winning the game 8-6, but the Phillies were able to come back and score 6 runs. I think got 6 runs in the 6th inning. They did have a couple of chances to do it in, they had 2 men on with 1 out, man on second and third with 1 out in the 8th inning. They weren't able to capitalize on that. I do expect that today the Phillies will do a little bit better. However, the big story that I think, the big story to really talk about, how about the Miami Heat, coming back in Boston and winning that game to bring it to Game 7. I would have thought Miami was over and done with, but Jimmy Buckets just said, no, I am not done, and I'm going to continue to play. 47 points by him. They really they overcame some odds there, especially in a raucous Boston crowd to take that win, which was good for them. I thought that series going 7 games. Actually, it's been a good series. I did not think that Miami was going to, come out guns a-blazing, and they did. So it's one of the things that, all right, I was excited to see, and it's going to be a fun game to watch tomorrow to see who actually will come out on top of that. There he is. And without further ado, Hall of Fame boxing writer, Jack Hirsch.
It had to be. Good morning, Pax. It had to be a power outage. It was crazy because I saw you sent me the link. I wasn't getting it, on my laptop. I went to my backup system, the iPad, and I got it there. And the strange part about it, I was entering my password, which was valid, but it wasn't going through. It would make sense at all, in the backup. I mean, sometimes they do some construction in the area. There's certain an outage temporarily, but it was kind of wild. But okay, made it on here. I came 5 minutes late, so I'll pay my fine.
There you go. We'll just deduct it from the millions of dollars you get paid.
Yeah, I'll maybe appeal it somehow. The union won't allow me to pay it outright. They'll tell me to appeal it.
Of course, because it's better in your pocket than in anyone else's. So the longer it's held in your pocket, you get all of the interest from all of those millions of dollars that you get fined for this.
No.
So yeah, I can imagine. So I of course I just jumped right on the fact that Miami was able to take the game in Boston yesterday, which was a little bit of a surprise. I thought that maybe they were done, and that they weren't going to be able to handle the crowd and Boston, but they did. They were able to come out as I think it was 111-103 victory.
You're kind of wondering, has the NBA lost its edge as far as home court advantage goes? I mean, back in the day, long ago, playing at home for the most part seemed to be like an automatic win in a big game for the most part. But in the modern NBA, does it really mean that much? Has the NBA home court advantage? Is it now the equivalent to what you might get in the NFL? Where it's a little bit of an advantage, but no more than that a visiting team could go in and win? Because let's say hypothetically, and I thought Boston was going to wrap it up, even though I picked Boston to win in 7 beforehand. They're up 3-2. Everything's going their way. Miami didn't have anything in the 5th game. So I basically thought it was going to end last night. But let's say the game was in Miami instead of Boston. Would we have been as confident in Miami, in Boston wrapping it up? Probably not. We would have said to themselves, okay, they're going to Miami. It's a 50-50 game. Maybe Miami wins. Boston will get them in game 7. But now they're going back to Miami. And if this were a few years ago, even a couple of years ago, we would have said big advantage Miami. Of course, you're better off playing at home. But is it really any advantage to Miami at all in one game?
Well, the fact that it is a game 7, and if it was any other city, I would say maybe. Like if this was Philadelphia, I would say maybe that there would, because the crowd would be a little bit more excitable. In Miami, things are, the fans there are not necessarily the most enthusiastic. And I've seen a number of times in this playoffs that they still don't even have sellouts. There's a lot of open seats. And that's got to affect the team a little bit. I mean, I don't know how much a player on the court really pays attention. Like, wow, man, we can't even sell out the stadium. And if that actually comes as a thought process or a deterrent to a player. But I mean, obviously, playing in Miami is got its benefits just in general, because it is Miami. It is it's always warm. You can go right to the beach. But I feel like that's kind of the problem with the Miami fans, is that is so much else that you'd want to do rather than sit in a stadium. Although the air conditioning probably works pretty well.
What kind of fan base comes along to, let's say, Miami? Like if they were playing the Sixers, how many Sixer fans would be in the stands? I mean, what would the percentage be of cheering? I know if this were the New York Yankees playing in Miami, there'd be a lot of people, supporting the Yankees. There'd be a lot supporting the Green Bay Packers wherever they play. The fan base follows. And I know it's got to be a little demoralizing. I went to a Baltimore Oriole game at Camden Yards years ago, and I may as well have been at Yankee Stadium for the amount of noise. They put on the meter to make some noise for the Orioles, the home team, and it was quiet. And I mean, and you make a good point. What does that do for the player? They might figure the heck with it. If the fans don't care enough about us to support us, then I just want to get down my individual stats to be well. And if we don't win, screw it. If they don't care, why should I care? Maybe, maybe that's gently in the back of their minds.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I mean, obviously these guys are professionals, so it better not be. I would hope that it's not like that. But I mean, I guess anything is possible. And you said about like when the Yankees went down to Camden Yards, I know that when the Eagles go to play the Dolphins, that the 2 times or 3 times that I have been there, we have taken over that stadium to the tune of about 25,000 people. And, the same thing kind of happens when the Phillies play against Washington, the Nationals, that the Phillies fans all go down there. It's hard for the Washington Nationals. Even when they were winning the World Series, they did not have a real strong fan base, and they still had open seats. So when there's 15 to 20,000 fans that travel from Philadelphia down 95 to go to go to Nationals Park, whatever that ballpark is named, I know that it's loud like the Phillies. It's like a home game for the Phillies. And I know that people in Washington can't stand it. Washington tried a couple of times to say, we are not going to sell tickets to Philadelphia people. If you have a Philadelphia or a Pennsylvania,
Well, they could return the favor. They can go to Philadelphia. I don't see
but
the
they don't.
Give them a taste of their own medicine in a way.
Yeah, but they got to be fans first.
Miami's a little different. I'm going to tell you why, because you have a certain amount of people who are retired there, who actually lived in the Boston area. They grew up as Celtic fans, and other teams as well. They come down to Miami. And that's where they're living now, but they haven't lost their affiliation. That's what happens with the Yankees in Florida. You have a lot of people who are retired, who go to the games, who are Yankee fans their whole life, or Met fans, maybe even Philly fans. I mean, I don't know how many people from the Philly area actually retire in the Miami area,
That's
but I
more
know
Tampa.
a lot in New York do.
Yeah, so I feel like that's Tampa. But a lot more Yankees and Philly
In
people.
Game 7, I mean, for Miami to win, you would think Jimmy Butler have to come up big again. And
Yes.
I mean, in repeating a performance like he did yesterday, 47 points, carrying the team, can you do it a couple of days apart? And keep in mind with the Celtics that Tatum and Brown didn't play poorly. They played well on balance. I mean, it wasn't like
they did, but between them, they only had one shot in the first 11 minutes of that fourth quarter, and that tells me a couple of things. One, when you heard about Harden not getting many shots in the fourth quarter, and why wasn't they shooting, and the same now you're hearing about Tatum, and they're the big two guys from
points between the two of them isn't sensational. It's adequate, put it that way, adequate.
Right, but the fact that they all between them only had one shot in the first 2/3 of the fourth quarter, that tells me that means that they were playing really good defense, and that maybe it had nothing to do with Harden not being able to get shots off. It had more to do with the defense of the Heat clamping down on the people they needed to clamp down on. And ultimately, when you were forced to make everybody else shoot the ball in Boston, they didn't do as well. So
yeah, Butler, it was a situation yesterday. You got the feeling that both Tatum and Brown were kind of looking towards the other one. They were willing to defer to the other one to maybe carry the team a little bit. In the case of Jimmy Butler, he knew he had to carry the team on his back. And all due respect to Kyle Lowry, who just was so yesterday. I mean, sometimes you get these star players, they do need to ease off just a little bit. They get the feeling, this just isn't quite their day. They can play well, but they really look for someone else to step up and help them. But you got the feeling yesterday Jimmy Butler knew, he reminded me of like Pedro Serrano in the movie Major League, like with the bat, like he cursed the bat out. He says, "I'll do it myself now."
Right,
so,
right.
You got that feeling, but to play a game like that 2 days apart, and does he necessarily have to? The Heat are good enough to step up and win a Game 7. With that said, I'm picking the Celtics to win a game.
And you and Stephen A. also picking the Celtics. I watched a little quick video of Stephen A. saying that he was dumbfounded by the fact that Boston lost that game. But ultimately, it was more a testament to how Miami played, not how Boston played.
Well, do you think Boston went to Miami? I know they said all the right things. They have to win one more game. Miami's coming at them. It's far from over. Players, coaches say the right things, but do they really necessarily feel that way? Boston had to feel good. They're going to Miami 3-2. We're ending it here. Maybe they weren't as up for the game. In Miami, I guess their pride was a little bit hurt. They heard someone like a Draymond Green already talking about the Warriors playing the Celtics, that he had it planned in advance, and it kind of maybe gave them that extra, little fuel, that extra little motivation.
Yeah, something that you put on the bulletin board that you're looking at on the way in and the way out of the locker room, just saying, oh yeah, you really got this planned out? That's like announcing your plans to God.
I don't know.
All of a sudden things can change.
You want to know something? I don't know the bulletin board material, whether we make too much out of it or not. I'm sure the players will say, no, it counts for something. It motivates us more. But really, with the NBA Finals on the line, any big playoff game, what more motivation do you need than that? So if a guy says that you're awful, you're terrible, you're this, you're that, of course you're going to want to show him and you're going to want to show it up and stick it back to them. But how much more motivation can you have? I mean, that's pretty pathetic. If you need extra motivation to win a playoff game, your motivation should be sky high as is.
I agree that you really shouldn't need, and like it says, when you're at that level, you should be self-motivated. But I mean, these guys are human beings just like anything else. And it's, if they were that motivated in game 5, they didn't show it, so it was like, and Boston was able to take the 3-2 lead and come back home. And then they needed to, put it out there today. So, or yesterday, and they did. So now we have a game 7, and in the meantime, you have Golden State just resting.
But Patsy, one of the urgency involved, because we've heard this said before, think of how hard it is to just get back to that spot. And yet, if you're the Celtics and the Heat, next season you start the merry-go-round all over again, and you know how hard it is to get to one game away from going to the finals, just to get to that point, and here they are. So to me, if I'm a player, I'm a coach, there's a feeling of desperation because you might not get this close even ever again in your whole career, for all you know.
Well, I mean, you think about it, just a couple of years ago, they were up against the Lakers. The Heat were, and, of course, lost the championship then. So to be able to get to this point right here, I mean, it's like you get so close. And if the Celtics were to lose, trust me, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. In fact, I would be really happy about it. But I'm glad that the Sixers didn't make it through Miami, because I feel like that Boston would have crushed us.
Is Jimmy Butler an enemy in Philadelphia? Is he greeted warmly?
I feel like he's greeted warmly. I mean, he gets the initial cheer and then the boo. So I feel that Jimmy Butler he understood and was he just got Philadelphia. So he knows that if you play hard and you do what you need to, and and you don't talk about the fans. Like, the fans are intelligent guys, intelligent people. So they know a lot about their sports here. And if you're going to go ahead and start, blaming the fans, oh, well, don't cheer for me now when you're booing me and whatever. There's been a lot of talk from different players about the Philadelphia fan base, and even the coach that acts like that he knows so much better than everybody else. It's like he doesn't know better than everybody else.
You talk about the fan base, the Warrior fan base. Reportedly, they were throwing things at Charles Barkley. We don't condone that. That's crossing a line. Charles Barkley, is he considered a Sixer or a Sun?
Sixer.
A Sixer. How's his legacy in Philadelphia? Does it rate high? Does it rate so-so? Does it rate close to Dr. J's? Anywhere near there?
Yes, I would say that it does. I mean, he's pretty well revered here. And so obviously he was the first one to say, listen, you guys are not putting a championship team out here. You're not giving me the pieces. If you're not going to give me the pieces around me to win a championship, I want to go somewhere else. And, at the time, it was Harold Katz that was the owner of the team. And Harold Katz traded him away for, I think it was a box of donuts and a couple of munchkins. You know what I mean? So it was, we really didn't get much back for him. And it showed. And the Sixers really suffered for the back part of the 80s because of that. But again, it wasn't that Harold Katz didn't want to win. He definitely wanted to win. I just don't think that he had the right people in place to make it a winner. And that was part of what, it took. Again, Pat Croce, who never had, who always wanted to own the Sixers and was talking about owning the Sixers even back in the 80s, and then of course he came on, and he was right around the same time as Allen Iverson. And he brought an energy to the Sixers that was not there before. And that energy got contagious. And I feel like that's what started that whole process of the Sixers winning, and bringing, winning the first game of the Lakers series, and possibly, I mean, really just being a bad call away from winning game 2. Had they been up 2-0 against the Lakers, it might have been a whole different series. Instead, they got that bad call, and next thing you know, the Lakers won the next,
I mean,
14
people and I include myself in this, forget that game 2. We just remember the remaining 3 games after that, games 3, 4, and 5, where the Lakers just completely routed the Sixers. I mean, it was a complete mismatch, but
Right.
You never know what would have happened in a game 2. I doubt if the Sixers could have won the series under any circumstance, even if they went up 3-0. I think it would have woken the Lakers up completely. But then again, maybe a team starts pressing a little more. Maybe they're not as dominant. So you grab every opportunity you can. For example, when the Cleveland Cavaliers, LeBron James's last year there, they go to the finals against Golden State when J.R. Smith didn't shoot the ball under the basket. They had a chance to steal game 1. And we knew that Cleveland wasn't in Golden State's class, then even with LeBron, Golden State was miles ahead of them. But if they somehow steal game 1, all of a sudden, they get Golden State thinking a little. Maybe they get them pressing a little. Maybe they open the door up just slightly for, good things to happen for Cleveland. But when you lose a game, especially that's winnable for you and you're a big underdog, then it's over. Then the favorite team even thinks we could even play bad and beat these guys.
Right. Well, it's interesting just how the mindset of a player can be, can you win? You're not going to win. I mean, like I said, I feel like the mindset of the Sixers in game 5 and game 6 was defeated, and they played it. They played that way, and that as close as it came was as far away as it was ever going to be, and that's unfortunate, that they just didn't have the gumption. And staying with basketball, since I'm going to segue just directly to this, the Lakers got a new coach, and obviously it is not Doc Rivers, which is a bummer.
No, I wasn't expected to be Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers also didn't really want to go to the Lakers. At least outwardly, he said he wants to basically stay where he is. I mean, going to the Lakers, how would that have bettered Doc Rivers' situation? You might say, well, he's off the hot seat with the Sixer fans, but you go to LA and you're on the hot seat immediately. Frank Vogel won an NBA title a couple of years ago and he's gone. So, the Laker job, you're in the hot seat all the time, unless you win. They're not going to have much patience in that market. And Doc Rivers going to the Lakers, that would have had to have been his absolute last stop. I mean, maybe
I agree with that.
Maybe after the Sixers, maybe he could squeeze out a spot somewhere. It's hard to envision a Doc Rivers ever being an assistant coach when you've been a head coach, for as long as he has, and have had different stops in high-profile markets, Boston, LA, Philadelphia. But I never took it seriously, the Doc Rivers talk. I mean,
the only thing that gave it any serious credential was the fact that it was LeBron James that was trying to push it, and the fact that they hired Darvin Ham makes me think a couple of things. One, that what's her name, Judy Buss, the owner of the Lakers,
Jenny Buss,
is not listening to her players and not having them. I mean, I guess it makes a little bit goes into some of the decision making, but she is not going to bend to the whims of LeBron James, which I thought, okay, that tells me a lot. Like, hey, listen, when you win multiple titles, maybe then I'll listen to you, but you only won me one here and you haven't made the playoffs the last couple of years. So if you ain't putting any money in my pocket, then I'm not really interested in listening to what you got to say.
She may have listened to him, Pax, in the sense that she may have gotten him a good compromise candidate. He tweeted something really nice, LeBron, over, Coach Ham getting the position. He can't wait to get to work. LeBron, I don't think he would have done it if he was unhappy with the choice. I think he just would have basically been silent. That's the way LeBron usually operates. So the idea he tweeted out something really nice shows even if that wasn't his first choice, it's an okay choice with him that, he's not going to be upset with it all. Maybe upset LeBron a little more going into this process. Jenny Buss, who I don't know, she's still Phil Jackson's girlfriend, but was for a lot of years at least, and has reportedly a good relationship with Phil Jackson. At least they're good friends. She had Jackson in on the coach search, okay? And
Right.
that LeBron James can't stand Phil Jackson. And reportedly Phil Jackson was for trading LeBron James and keeping Russell Westbrook. And Phil Jackson, a great coach, when he was on the bench, but as far as his GM thing and running an organization, I mean, the job he did with the Knicks says it all.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, I feel like he made his name off of the backs of everybody who played on that Bulls team. I mean, they had Michael Jordan, and then Scottie Pippen, and then you think about, they had specifically, Dennis Rodman. You know what I mean? I mean, when you have those three players, you don't need much more. You could have Drek on the rest of the team, and as long as those three guys are doing what they do best, Michael Jordan out there putting it up there, and if he misses, then you've got Scottie Pippen taking up some of that. And then,
this is where Phil Jackson proved himself that he was a really good coach. The one full year that Michael Jordan was out, that he took off to play baseball, they won twice as many games as they lost during the regular season without Jordan. And if there wasn't a controversial foul call on Hubert Davis during Game 5 of the Bull-Knick playoff game, in which the Knicks went on to win in 7 games, maybe the Bulls win that series. And now they're in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Pacers, and who knows what happens there.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, but also, I feel like without Jordan, they still were missing that piece. And even though he did pretty well and got that far, he didn't. You're saying it was a controversial call, but it still went to 7 games. They did bring it to the brink, and the Knicks were able to pull it out.
But they won twice as many as they lost in the regular season without Jordan, without Michael Jordan. Keep that in mind. They're like 55-27. I mean, that's a darn good record. Even with Jordan, you're not going to have that much a better record. You'll win 8 more games or thereabouts, which is expected. Coaches and managers get put down a lot if they win with talent. Well, what are they supposed to do? They can't do any better than win with talent. I agree with you. In a lot of cases, a team could win with a number of coaches. So maybe the coach sometimes is given too much credit. Sometimes they're given less credit if they have a mediocre team and they have that team contending year after year. People look at the bottom line and say, well, what did they win? It depends how you look at it, really, from what angle.
Well, you know what? Let's segue right into our debate question, because you actually have this listed as debate question number 2. So we're going to adjust
order.
this. Adjust this a little bit. You asked specifically if baseball managers are underpaid. Let's put that to all of sports. Are baseball managers and our coaches, like basketball coaches, hockey coaches, are they underpaid? And
Max, you're audible. You're calling an audible here. That changes everything. You're audible.
Well, it does change everything, but it also plays a part because, whether you're a baseball manager or whether you're a basketball coach or hockey coach, you are underpaid in comparison to the egos and the personalities that you have on your bench. And ultimately, if you were to go to war, against this player, most of the time you lose. It's rare occasions when the front office is going to take your side of things, because they want to keep the player, because the player is the one that puts the people in the seats. You very rarely have a coach be the center of attention, when they're playing. The only time I would ever think that there may have been a coach that was bigger than the team themselves, when you think of like Tom Landry with the Cowboys, that he was a bigger thing. I mean, we're even talking about Phil Jackson, but Phil Jackson paled in comparison to Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was the face of that, and obviously he needed a coach, but without Michael Jordan, if they had a contentious relationship, Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan, it would have never have worked for Phil. So
well, Magic Johnson and Paul Westhead, the Lakers moved on from Westhead because there was that power struggle.
Right. And those are the types of things that you think about. So would you say that managers and coaches are underpaid in general?
No, because it's different sports packs. NFL coaches aren't underpaid. Even college coaches. I mean, look at what's the money Nick Saban's making. He's making over $10 million a year. I'm sure. And a number of these college coaches, they're making $6-7 million a year. Even in smaller programs, they're making like a good $3 million a year in the smaller programs. And then you take baseball managers. In the past, they weren't underpaid. And then they started getting paid less and less. The highest paid manager in all of baseball is Terry Francona with the Indians, last I heard. And he's getting a little over $4 million a year. That's it. Joe Girardi, for all the nonsense he's putting up with in Philadelphia, maybe he deserves that nonsense coming his way. He's getting paid about $3.5 million a year approximately. You have certain managers like Dave Roberts of the Dodgers. Last I heard, he was getting paid something like $1.5 million a year. They're getting paid low money. And these small market teams, I think you have some managers out there who might be getting paid less than $1 million, something like $750,000. I kind of wonder what Kansas City's paying their manager, Baltimore, some of these other teams. And it's such an important job. You got to meet the press, the team all the time. If the team is doing poorly, you get the blunt of the criticism from the press and the public. It's a hard job. It's a grueling job. It's an important job. In the past, the market was set higher before it went down. An example, Steve Swindell, who used to be George Steinbrenner's son-in-law, when he had some power within the Yankee organization, he worked out a contract with Joe Torre for $8 million a year. And of course, no one is going to sign for that now. Even a Tony La Russa, he's going to be somewhere close to $4 million, but he's not going to get that type of money. And when Joe Torre left the Yankees and went to the Dodgers, it started changing the amount of money managers would get. The Dodgers signed him for 3 years, a total of $13 million. That would have been a season and a half. So his salary was basically cut in half, and he was a free agent, and the Dodgers wanted him badly because the GMs make the decision. There's analytics. Managers are expected, I don't want to say to do less, but they don't carry the clout that they had. They're considered replaceable, okay, now, in just about every case. The only time a manager can maybe get a few million a year if they have a major name and they're available. Compare that to an NBA coaches. Coach Pop is probably making about $10 million a year for San Antonio. He's established. But my point is, if Coach Pop was as successful a baseball manager, and let's compare Coach Pop as far as prestige, him and Tony La Russa about on a par as far as respect for the job they do. And Coach Pop is making more than 3 times the amount of a Tony La Russa. Baseball managers are underpaid, and Aaron Boone's probably getting somewhere like a couple of million a year for the New York Yankee market. I just think baseball managers are underpaid compared to other sports, the coaches, put it that way. And I can't say hockey Pags. The reason I want to say hockey because the players are paid lower. So I know the coaches are paid lower as well. So hockey doesn't count, but compared to football and basketball, they are vastly underpaid.
Well, I would say in comparison, if you're trying to compare the oranges together of NCAA football in comparison to Major League Baseball, there is no comparison. Obviously, those coaches, if you're a good name coach in college football, you're going to get money. And that's because they're not spending the money anywhere else. They don't have to pay their players, and that makes the big difference in things. That being said, when you're in the NFL, you actually are getting some money. So if you're an NFL coach, you are typically getting paid a few $1 million, like $3 to $5 million a year. And that's about the going rate. I would say it's probably about the average. With baseball, you're right. I don't know enough about it. But, first off, I can't stand La Russa. I was never a big fan of him. I was a much bigger fan of Joe Torre. And I thought that he would, and Lou Piniella, even though he didn't win as often, I liked the way that I liked his management style. And then I think of the guy who, he lasted the Tigers, but was really known for the Pirates for a long time.
Oh, Jim Leyland.
Jim Leyland. I mean, I thought that he was a great coach. And then of course, actually Uncle Charlie, Uncle Charlie here who won a World Series with the Phillies, but did bring the,
well, Emmanuel. I thought you meant
the Indians are now the Guardians. Yeah, Charlie Manuel. I mean, obviously, and still is really big in the Phillies organization. I mean, he's actually working with AA players and helping them with their swings and their at bats and such like that, because he's still such a great mind. And just talking with him now, like he lights up a room even at like 85 years old. I mean, he's still commands so much respect because of his knowledge of the game. It was interesting. I was talking to Gary Matthews the other day. He happened to be staying at the same hotel I was at. Mm-hmm. And, it's interesting when you're talking to a ball player who knows the game really well. Yeah, because I know baseball, but I don't know baseball like that. I like every ins and out. I couldn't be a manager, because I just don't have all of the intricacies of the game the way that these guys do. And it's great when you could see through their eyes a little bit exactly what it is that they see. When they start to explain things in a way that's just like, wow, I never really thought of it like that, because you're just not used to seeing things that way. It's like, it would be like me trying to explain something in a boxing term to you, and you saying, well, no, because this could happen, and this could happen, and this could happen. And you could cite all of the different examples that would prove my one example wrong. And that's the same thing with baseball. It's like when you're talking to, Gary Matthews, he did not get a ring. He came in the 1981 season. So he played in the World Series in '83, but he was not part of that 1980 team.
He wasn't around by 93, was he, when they went to the series, the Phillies?
No, I think he was. He might have been announcing at that time. You know what I mean? Because he was one of the in booth guys at that point. But yeah, he was not playing anymore. And just listening to him, and when you talk about different things, and you're saying, because I was asking him, obviously the Phillies were having a hard time with the bats, and I'm like, well, when I think about somebody having a problem at the plate, the first thing that comes to my mind is I remember watching the conversation between Pete Rose, A-Rod, and Frank Thomas. And Pete Rose was talking to those two guys and saying, listen, it was your swing that got you to the major leagues. So you never want to change your swing. You want to move up or back or to the left or to the right in the box, and until you can start to see the ball the way that you need to see the ball. But the swing should never change, because your swing is what got you there. And then I think about batting coaches who try to change the swings of some of these players.
They did it with Derek Jeter. The Yankees, when he finished the season slowly in his free agent year, the next year the coaches are changing him, and Jeter finally dropped the experiment and started hitting again.
Yeah. So, I mean, and those are the things that, like the first thing, that's what makes Pete Rose such an asset to baseball, even though he's still,
Asset to baseball. He's not in baseball,
I
Pags.
understand
What
that.
the
I
heck you
understand that,
talking?
but he was still so
Uh,
so knowledgeable. The fact that baseball is, doing what they're doing with him, I understand. They're going to bring him in.
I'm on the
They're
same
waiting
page.
for him to die. You know what I mean? That's what's happening. They're waiting for him to die so that they can bring him in posthumously.
You know who they
And
hurt? You know who they hurt? And that's maybe an argument for another time. For years at least, players would get inducted into the Hall of Fame. And Johnny Bench said it best. The year he got inducted, the reporters came up to him. The first thing they said, "Congratulations, John." And then the next thing they said, "Do you think Pete Rose belongs in the Hall of Fame?" And all these Hall of Famers have to answer these questions. It's annoying, and they shouldn't have had to deal with it. Let me just go back to what you mentioned with Jim Leland and what you said earlier in the show, Pags, about organizations listening to the players. They have more power than the managers, coaches. The managers, coaches would get fired ahead before they get rid of a star player. Well, when Jim Leland managed the Pirates, Barry Bonds, their biggest star, he was berating a much lesser player. I forgot who the player was, but he wasn't one of the more important players on the team. Bonds is putting him down. Jim Leland got in Bonds' face and told him to shut up, that he's not going to put up with any of his nonsense. And Bonds was trying to explain himself. And Leland basically said, just shut up. I don't want to hear what you have to say. You got it? You understand where I'm coming from? And then he stormed away. And Bonds was just left there with no power, completely undressed, no recourse to do anything, nowhere to go. But he was put right in his place. Case closed. It was done with. Could you imagine today? Sometimes a manager can get away with it, but it would be the beginning of the end. Imagine Aaron Boone getting in Aaron Judge's face and saying that. He wouldn't get fired immediately, but that would be a hook that would be held against them, where the Yankees could come back to it another time.
well, yeah, but as you explained that to me, and obviously you're the big part of that is you have a player berating another player. That is one of those times where, as a manager, now, and I'm assuming this happened all publicly, that
It was
this
caught
is,
on camera. I saw it. Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, obviously, that's, I've never seen that clip, but I'd love to see that clip because ultimately you do have a guy like Bonds, and Bonds wasn't as big as he was, back then. I mean, he was a good player, but he wasn't.
He was a star. The Pirates' main best play on the team.
But when you start bad mouthing one of your own teammates, I mean that starts a dissension in the ranks that most teams cannot recover from. And to have the manager take the back of that one player, at the expense of his star. Well, I mean, obviously, it had to write the beginning of the end for one of the two. Obviously,
No, it
Leland,
had no effect. It was case closed. It was done with. I think Bonds had enormous respect for Leland. He might not have liked that incident, but he knew Leland was the boss. That was the mindset. Jim Leland's the boss of this team. I'm a player. I'm the star. Listen, you talk about, not just a player berating another player and putting him down, and it should be dealt with. You like to mention how fond you are of that 1993 Philly World Series team. I was disgusted with Curt Schilling holding the towel over his face in the dugout, like we're not supposed to notice. Like I'm not supposed to notice. He's having a towel over his face. He could have said afterwards, I was just so nervous to watch. I didn't want to jinx it. He could have put a spin on it that wasn't putting Mitch Williams down, yet he didn't do it because Curt Schilling is a big blowhard at the end of the day. That's why ESPN hired him. They like to hire guys like that. They have a whole roster. We're waiting for Richard Sherman and Antonio Brown to get their positions at ESPN when they're conclusively done with their careers.
Yeah, and there's so much about that team. But yes, I agree. And it was one of the things that started the beginning of the end for Schilling here. It was like, how can you not have the back of your teammate? And that's where that came from. You know what I mean?
Did
It
the
was
Philly
like,
fans turn against Schilling because Mitch Williams was so unpopular? Even Lenny Dykstra afterwards said, let's be honest about it. We got to get guys that can close out games. He put Mitch Williams down without mentioning him by name, and Mitch Williams had to be devastated. Now, conversely, Pags, could you imagine the Buffalo Bill team saying, Jim Kelly, Bruce Smith saying, let's face it, we have to get a kicker who could, nail the game-winning kicks at the end after the Super Bowl. Imagine that.
well,
If they
I
said
mean,
something like that.
that they could have said that, and it would have been really legitimate at the time. Obviously, you got to, yep. They can blame the kicker all
It
they
was a
want.
tough kick. It was a tough kick. I mean, but that's a story unto itself. It wasn't it. And that day and age, a 47-yard kick at night, that position in the field. In this day and age, kickers have gotten so much better. That's the one position over the year, Pags, where kickers, have gotten improved so much more than any other position. Years ago, when I was a kid, 50 yards was a monster kick kick from 50 yards out. Now, if you miss a 52-yarder, it's held against the kicker. It's not considered a crapshoot type kick. You expect him to make it more often than not.
Right. Well, and I would agree that 60-yard kicks are now what 50-yard kicks used to be. When you had a 49-yard kick, that was a tough kick to make. Still is, obviously. I mean, I'm not kicking a 50-yard field goal, and especially when you have a whole bunch of guys running at you, and when you think about those types of things, it's like, all right, as a kicker, but that's what you do. That's what you get paid for.
Are the managers underpaid? To answer the question, I say baseball managers are underpaid. What do you say?
I think I agree that they are somewhat underpaid. When I think of this, the Phillies, first off, again, Girardi. So that's a little bit of the frustrating thing that I hear. That when, all right, so we don't want to fire Girardi because we'd have to eat some of his contract. That's not, Harper. You ain't eating a Harper style contract. So I don't want to hear about
9 million, about 9 million.
I don't want to hear about the $10 million that you have to eat because you hired the wrong coach, or the wrong manager.
Add a little more onto it, because if you have a new manager, you got to now give him a manager's fee. So call it 10 million. And if you're getting a name manager, you got to always pay him a little more than just one of your coaches or someone from the minors.
Well, and ultimately, then we had the guy Kaplan, who wasn't getting paid a tremendous amount here, lasted a couple of years just because he wasn't really a Philly guy. That's
creating a stir. Your old manager now. He's making a thing. He refuses to come out for the anthem. Now other people might follow. To me, listen, we're all shook up with really deeply affected what happened in Texas, what happened in Buffalo beforehand. If he doesn't want to come out for the anthem, don't come out for the anthem, but he's making it an issue. He's making it a public thing. That's what I kind of object. Just do your thing. You don't feel comfortable going out for it. You're taking your own individual stand. I respect that, but he's making a public spectacle out of this.
See, there I'd have to disagree a little bit. Not the fact that as long as he's not making it about himself, and that's where, and I'm going to tread lightly here a little bit. That's where I feel like Colin Kaepernick started to lose people. That he initially, there was an initial reaction of people did not like whatever he was doing, and I understand that part. But when it came down to it, as it started to drag on, it became more about him than about what it was that he was actually protesting. And I feel that specifically because this is such a polarizing, situation that's occurring right now in the United States, where children, and it's really children. Children is the biggest deal here. That they're just getting killed needlessly because of the ability to get some of these weapons and so on and so forth. I think more people need to be speaking out about this. I think that it needs to be heard by a lot more people, and a lot more people need to do. And him doing this, bringing note to it. I mean, it was, I think, also the coach of Dallas, the Mavericks.
Steve Kerr. But there's a difference involved here, okay? Steve Kerr spoke specifically on the issue at a press conference. He went into detail about it. He says, I don't want to talk about basketball today after what just happened, and explains, when are we going to change this? When are we going to change that? He was giving his viewpoint, agree with it, don't agree with it, but it was a very emotional thing. But, Gabe Kapler just says, I'm just not coming out for the anthem because I'm fed up with this country, with what goes on. The country's never going to be completely straightened out. There are always going to be things to be fed up with. Let's be honest about it. And that's just about any country or whatever. And it's his right. And I'm not putting Gabe Kapler down for his position, but he's just basically saying the heck with it. He's just talking negative. Steve Kerr, the coach of the Golden State Warriors, at least was talking about what he feels has to be done. And the people he put down, he put the politicians down for specific reasons, saying they're so scared about losing their job. How much more we're going to have this or that? He explained it. And Gabe Kapler,
and I feel like Gabe Kapler took
like grandstanding a little more, even though Gabe Kapler, I have no doubts he's sincere. I'm not saying
right.
Gabe,
I don't think he's as eloquently spoken. He's not as eloquently spoken as Steve Kerr.
Right.
And that's part of the problem.
I think I'm willing to give Gabe Kapler the benefit of that he's 100% sincere in his views. There's no phoniness behind it. I just feel his approach, is basically just saying, screw it, I want nothing to do with it, rather than really speaking on the solution and coming out. But, it's like you say, Pax, are different people. Steve Kerr maybe is a bit more eloquent, can discuss it a little better, perhaps.
Right, where I feel like that Kaplan doesn't have the words. And also he had to, again, they play in the same city. So ultimately there is a thought process like, okay, well, he's doing this, I have to do something here to kind of, keep that along the same lines. I think he may have gone about it the wrong way, where, it's like, hey, I'm not coming out for the anthem, again.
Part of it too, Pax. Can I say something? Part of
absolutely.
It too, in this day and age, sometimes coaches, managers, and I'm not saying this is the case, they try to ingratiate themselves, get on the good side of their players, okay? Because they realize their players have feelings on certain social issues, and they'll say, oh, our coach, our manager, he's a good guy. He's got our back. He's on this side of the issue. He's on that side of the issue. I kind of feel a little bit could be that way, because early in the year, one of Gabe Kapler's coaches, who's African-American, I forgot his name, he got mad at the former Cardinal manager who's a coach with San Diego now. And he was like really yelling, and the coach was so loud to the point where the umpires kicked him out of the game. That's how out of control he was. So the coach says to Gabe Kapler, the coach from the other team, he said to Gabe Kapler, control your coach. And the coach said, oh, that's racism. You know what I mean? Going back to the days of slavery. That was insane to me, that whole thing. It wasn't meant that way in any way, shape, or form. But Gabe Kapler, right. I agree with my coach automatically. It's like he wouldn't take a position, it's like I have your back no matter what. And I guess that's a mentality in sports. Players, coaches sometimes have one another's back no matter what. You could have this pitcher who's intentionally throwing and drilling batters on the other team. And then when the other team retaliates, they defend their guy, even though their guy, they have to know is at fault for starting the whole thing.
Right. And that's, and that's what's happened with the Mets a few times. I mean, obviously the Mets, There's something that was told to me a long time ago that and I look at it as it's really it goes throughout all of sports. A team that drinks together wins together. And that camaraderie that you have in a locker room. It doesn't necessarily mean you got to go out to a bar and drink, but the camaraderie that you have in a locker room when you know that the other guy has your back, doesn't matter when or how much wrong you could be in the process of that. When you know that the other guy has got your back, that will actually start to propel. That's the pulling, everybody pulling in the same direction. And that's something that I'm really big on, that a team needs to pull in the same direction. And once you start getting everybody on that same page, you start to achieve championships. And it's not easy to do that, especially because you have a lot of egos. There's always the one person who's talking against the process, and all of these different things, and how much is that cancer in your locker room in comparison to everybody else in the same direction. I feel that that's the one thing that Tom Brady never gets enough credit for, is that he is a polarizing figure for everyone in that locker room. And it doesn't matter whether you're defense, special teams, or on offense. He is the leader of that locker room, and he makes sure that everybody knows that he is, and that he takes that bit. He actually learns about these players. He knows about these guys. He's intimate with everybody on that team because he wants to make sure everybody's on the same page. And obviously it shows because of the fact that he's been to 10 Super Bowls.
So when the Eagles were going well in 2017, did Carson Wentz go out for a beer or two with the guys after practice?
So, all right, I'll tell you what. It wasn't like a beer type of situation.
No, I actually used the term beer. The
one thing that was happening frequently that never gets really talked about enough is that was a very religious locker room, and that amongst everything else, that both Foles and Carson are pastors. They want to be pastors. So that was a very religious locker room. Even Frank Reich and Peterson, all very, very God-fearing men. And one of the things that was happening in that locker room on a weekly basis was that players were converting and actually getting baptized. And it was a weekly basis that players were getting baptized in the locker room, and they were, just whether it was for show or whether it was because of their beliefs, things were happening. And literally everybody in that locker room was all on the same page because of the words that they were talking, and just the feeling and such like that. So yes, it wasn't a beer per se. It was faith that maybe propelled them to have the games that they did and win the Super Bowl.
That could be dangerous too. I mean, and that can backfire. One of the reasons, and I think this is the main one, that Mark Jackson never got another head coaching job after getting let go by Golden State, is because his views, basically, he would try to force on others and be very negative towards others who didn't share his views or didn't share his exact faith in certain areas. So that could sometimes backfire, as well, if it's not handled the right way.
Right. And I agree with that. But in this case, it was, they said the team did what the team did, and it could not be recreated again, because in 2019, when Foles is gone, and it was only Carson, he was not able to rally the troops the way that Nick Foles was able to do. So it is definitely a double-edged sword that you try to do what you can and try to get everybody on the same page. But if you don't,
it's also, there are two schools of thought. You have a long day of practice. A lot of people have different lives. Sometimes someone has a wife, they have a kid, they just want to go home. I know myself in jobs I've held throughout my life, people would tell me, oh, they're going out to have a drink, this and that. I just wanted to go home. I like them. I'm seeing them at work as it is. I like them personally, but I'm not in the mood to hang out. I just want to get out of there. But if you get out of there and you don't go with the guys, you know, something is missing. You nearly feel obligated to go for the camaraderie. We had Tony Page, the talk show host on from WFAN here in New York. He was a talk show host for 16 years. He had the night shift from midnight to like 6 a.m. And the producers, directors told him when the show's over, go in with the other guys, chat a little, hang out a little bit. He was in the mood to get out of there after working all night. He said so. He said, I'm not. He said, I wasn't in the mood to get a cup of coffee with him at that time. My show's over. I just want to get out of there and unwind.
Right. You know, and obviously the morning guys weren't coming in early to come chat with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So why was it that he had to conform rather than the morning guys coming in an hour early or a half hour early to just chat it up some?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a different situation, but I understand completely. It's like, yeah, I don't want to be around that. I'm done working now. I'm ready to go home. You know, these guys are just getting started. I'm not interested in doing that. I just had to do 6 hours by myself. These guys have a whole team of people that are going to help them out in the morning. You know, I'm just not interested.
Oh, by the way, we miss Mac, and we're thinking of Mac. You know, maybe he'll be back tomorrow. We'll see. But we're always thinking of Mac, you know, all the time. I just thought of him now when we talked about staying late. In the beginning, I'd get Mac would work. I don't know whether he ever slept. I would get a text one time, like 5 a.m, until I told Mac, no more, not at that time. It's, you know, it could wait, but clocks are different with people.
Hey, I get it. I'm the same way. I'm you know, sports doesn't sleep, and neither do I. That's kind of how I feel. So listen, let's take a quick break here. We're going to be back here in just over 2 minutes. We're going to have a couple of commercials, and then we'll get back to this debate show. Maybe actually have ask her some of our debate questions that we have, because we haven't really even touched on anything a little bit. So
you didn't give an answer, Pax. I determined managers are underpaid.
And I agreed with you.
Back, and you agree, okay?
I definitely agreed there. So our debates, even though, yeah, I feel like it says when you're dealing with those types of egos and the amount of money that some of these players are making, the managers do need to be compensated more properly to be able to have a say, or else you're just going, again, the inmates start to run the asylum, and that's where you have a hard time with that. So I definitely agree with that. But we'll come back with some more questions right after these messages.
My baloney has a first name. It's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name. It's M-A-Y-E-R. Oh, I love to eat it every day. And if you ask me why, I'll say, 'cause Oscar Mayer has a way with B-O-L-O-G-N-A.
Oscar Mayer, the first name in Bologna.
How's that?
You know, one of the best things about being an ex-big leaguer is getting freebies to the game. Call the front office, bingo. And once these fans recognize me, I probably won't even have to pay for my light beer from Miller. Down it! I love them. These fans know I drink light because it's less filling and it tastes great. Good seats, huh?
You're in the wrong seat, buddy. Come on.
Oh, I must be in the front row.
Come on.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
Good seats, hey, buddy? He missed the tag! He missed the tag!
Mr. Green? Mr. Green?
Yeah.
You need any help?
Mm-mm.
I just want you to know, I think you're the best ever.
Yeah, sure.
Want my Coke? It's okay, you can have it.
No.
Really, you can have it.
Okay.
A Coke and a smile makes me feel good. Makes me feel nice.
See you around.
That's the way it should be. I like to see
Hey, kid.
the whole world smiling with me. Coca-Cola as life. Have a Coke and
Thanks, Mean Joe.
smile.
Hometown Foundation is excited to bring back the Dream Ride experience, August 26th to the 28th at Connecticut's Farmington Polo Club. Join us in celebrating the accomplishments of our Dream Riders while enjoying live music, a car and motorcycle show, family fun zone, pet adoptions, canine demonstrations, the Fireman's Chili Cook-Off, and much, much more. Get your tickets today.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Supporting the needs of our veterans. That's the goal of all of us at Team AmVets. Like Mitch, Carlos, and Kevin from our Welcome Home team that brings furniture to our vets.
We are Team AmVets.
Or Linda from our thrift stores who brings you great bargains every day.
I am Team AmVets.
And John, who picks up your thrift store donations that support California veterans programs.
I am Team AmVets.
Visit our website or a Team AmVets thrift store to donate or shop today.
Join the team!
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready. I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, from Brooklyn. Hey, guess any...
And we are back with the Mac and Jack Show. Me filling in for Mac while he is getting himself back together again. And hopefully he will be back tomorrow. And I'm here with Boxing Hall of Fame writer Jack Hirsch doing a debate show. And earlier in the week, I got some questions from Jack that we wanted to talk to debate. And there was one question that stood out to me that I have to ask because it was like, really? I didn't realize that this was such a hot topic, at least even in Jack's mind. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this question up right away. Gatorade baths.
I knew you were going to mention that. The remaining.
Yeah, just because as I sit there and I'm looking at it and I'm like, yeah, hold on. You think that they should be prohibited? That you should not have Gatorade baths anymore? Really?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, number one, it's stupid. It's played out. It's gone on forever. It's unsanitary. It's unsanitary. How do you feel a guy's drinking from the Gatorade and he's throwing it on you with all the germs? We're germ conscious. Number three, it's freezing cold weather. And when they dump it on these coaches, do you think the coaches like it? They hate it. They hate it with a passion. I think the other day we saw a coach running away from the Gatorade bath. They were chasing after him. Eventually, they gave up on it. They hate it. Who likes to get soaked? Another thing, too, a commentator's interviewing a player after the game who maybe got a walk-off hit, scored a touchdown, whatever. And they throw the Gatorade on him, and it gets on the person doing the interview, on him and her. I've seen these commentators, get the Gatorade bath, the after effects on it that get on them. I mean, the players should get fined for throwing it. One of the women announcers got it, on her the other day. I forgot who it was, the name, but she tried to be a good sport. She was very professional, smiling like it didn't bother her. But if I were her, I would be outraged. I'd say, you stupid blankety blank. I'd say it to myself at least. What the heck are you doing? I'm getting this on me. I'm a professional. Okay? I mean, it's played out. It's tiresome. It's dumb. It's unsanitary. And then cold weather. You tell me this. It's 12 degrees out and your clothes are all soaked and everything. I mean, I'm sure they have another pair of coaches that they could change into. I would hope they do. Imagine they don't. And they have to go home with the Gatorade all wet, and all that, get on the team bus, whatever. But it's just silly. It's played out. It was cute in the beginning. It was a lot of fun in the beginning. We got a big kick out of it. But this is like the gift that keeps on giving, but giving to who, I want to know. I mean, maybe it's like a mean streak. You're getting back at your coach by just dousing him with Gatorade. You're laughing, and the coach laughs about it. But make no mistake about it, these coaches hate getting the Gatorade thrown on them.
I disagree with that. I disagree with that completely. And the reason being is that, first off, they're not throwing the Gatorade on these coaches at the beginning of the game. It's to signify that they just won and that they won a really big game. Whether it be, I've seen Gatorade showers happen for somebody who won their first game, or that when they make it into the playoffs. But I feel like that. Yeah. So yes, it should be tempered some. And maybe winning your first game is a big deal, and you want to do it that way. But if you're going to the Super Bowl, it's like touching the trophy. You don't want to touch that trophy because you want to touch the Lombardi trophy. And that if you have any type of thought process on, hey, I don't want to touch this trophy right here because my eyes are set for the bigger prize, I can appreciate that. That being said, then you shouldn't be throwing the Gatorade on the coach at that time either. You shouldn't, you should only do it one time in a season. Is my thought. Now, if you're doing it for every exciting thing that happens, then that's a little overdone. But I don't really see these, players overdoing that. I do know what you're talking about with the girl who did get doused. And in that case, I feel like the guys did it way wrong. Like they literally just threw the Gatorade at both of them. Now that was ridiculous. You know what I mean? Yeah, They should
get suspended. The player who did that should get suspended, okay? Because that's messing with a member of the media. You violated them. She got violated in the sense that she had Gatorade thrown on her. And it wasn't, don't tell me it was an accident. They didn't mean to. The player being interviewed is right next to her. There's no way they could have missed her with that Gatorade.
And I kind of agree with Rick here. It's not unsanitary. They're drinking in cups, so the Gatorade is really untouched. That's why it's in the cooler. So I think the unsanitary part is being sticky afterwards, where in her case, she doesn't have the ability to change clothes where everybody else is jumping in the shower. That's a different scenario. So I prefer actually, where the Phillies, and I've seen other teams, they give the shaving cream or the whipped cream, pies, where in the middle of the interview, they get smashed with a shaving cream or a whipped cream pie in the face. I feel that that's maybe a little bit more appropriate because, hey, you just did something great. Yeah, you're just like everybody else type thing. We're going to bring you right back down to size that you can't have a big head in the process of this. When it comes to Gatorade baths, though, I look at that as a celebration thing, and where I feel that it should only be done in the biggest of moments. Now, you never really see, it's rare. Like I said, you have to have like a walk-off for somebody to get thrown
Pats,
like
teams
Gatorade.
that are
thrown on.
0-6, they win their first game. The coach gets a Gatorade bath to celebrate.
Well, I disagree with that completely. You know, if you're like, oh, your team stinks out loud, and now all of a sudden you're gonna celebrate a win.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it depends on really how everything is in the locker room to begin with. If everything is so dismal because of the losing, and all of a sudden you win and you want to celebrate that, maybe. But like again, I don't think a Gatorade bath kind of shows that in the right way. But because I don't see me.
The weather's cold. Listen. Talk about freezing cold weather. I can understand the Gatorade bath. It's 70 degrees out. It's not, it's somewhat warm. It's warm, okay? It's somewhat warm and not freezing, put it that way, like a 20-degree day. But the Dows are coached during, a winter game when it's cold out. I mean, you increase the risk of them getting pneumonia. And there was a case where a coach did get pneumonia afterwards, many years ago.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. I feel that it's a celebratory thing. They have jackets. They're going to be able to change in the locker room. So I don't really expect that that's a big deal. The guys don't get to do much.
The other day, I'm kicking myself, Pags, because I was watching the highlights and I didn't get the coach's name, but they were showing a highlight where he was just running away. This clip this past season in football, he didn't want to get doused with the Gatorade. So it was funny, like the players were like chasing him for a little bit, and it became obvious he didn't want to. There was a fun thing. Imagine that a coach running from his players.
Right.
But they knew he didn't want to get the Gatorade bath.
Right, but it was also fun. It was done in a fun way. It was a celebratory chase. You know what I mean? So they were celebrating the fact that they had won something. So, but I'm thinking that this is, I kind of agree here with Rick on this. That you're like,
I don't disagree with Rick. Listen, I know how I'm sounding. Hey, Rick, I'm not fun. I'm not a fun guy at times. You're right. I mean, Rick's 100% correct. I mean,
but think about this.
I'm just listen. It's been going on forever. This, and let me ask you this, and Rick could comment on this too. Most of the coaches who are on the receiving end of these Gatorade baths, do you really think they like it? I think most of the time they hate it. Really, but they smile. They're good sports about it, but I think they actually hate it.
Well, they may actually hate it, but the feeling of jubilation because they've won overtakes that. So I think that the deterrence of being, okay, well, I just got doused with Gatorade and now I'm not unhappy about that, even though we just won a really big game and we just won a game that warranted me getting doused in Gatorade. I don't know that that's a big deal.
Our ratings went up on this show. All of a sudden, we had the great news. We leapfrogged over like a major network. And all of a sudden, from behind you get doused with a big bucket of Gatorade. You would like smile, try to be a good sport, and you'd say, oh, come on,
Well, see, as frustrating, so now with me, there's two sides to that story. If I'm like I am right now, and all of a sudden we had that big of a win, where we are the new ESPN, so to speak, and something like that, and I am as I am here, and somebody douses me with Gatorade, I would be lighthearted and fun about that. If I'm all painted up and I got my, I'm as the Philly sports guy, and somebody wants to douse me in Gatorade, we better have just won the championship, because I don't like to be out of costume when I'm in costume. At the 5K, the most recent 5K that I did last weekend is really a testament to that, because obviously the first, I was sweating because it was so hot here. Running a 5K, I ran the first mile, had to walk the next two because of how hot it was and humid. And I looked like just bad. And of course, the first person I see when I go walking into the stadium is Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the Eagles, and he's introducing me to his wife. You know, and I'm like, I'm a mess. I mean, I look like a mess. The paint is all running down. My eyes look like an inverted raccoon because around my eyes, because I had to clear my eyes away because the silver, starts to burn my eyes, and it's just like I got to get it away from me and such. But I looked horrible. And then the first guy I got to see is Jeffrey Lurie, and I was like, obviously I couldn't touch up my paint beforehand, but it is what it is. And I got it on camera, obviously, that I met with him. I don't like being out of costume, and that's kind of an out of costume situation done for a good cause. Like I said, I told everybody I was running so that they didn't have to, so that they could donate money. That being said, today, when I'm going up to New York, I want to make sure that I am 100% in costume. When I went to Yankee Stadium, they wouldn't let me in with face paint. I had to take the face paint off. So I always keep a towel with me just in case. And I found it very odd. I thought initially I was taking pictures with the guys who were, the police officers that were outside of the stadium that, they surround the stadium. They make sure that there's nobody, nothing bad happening and nothing, So I took pictures. The guys are holding Uzis and stuff like that. And I'm taking a picture. And then I go to the security guard, and the security guard goes, "Yeah, I'm not letting you in." I'm like, "Why not?" Because no face paint's allowed. It's actually written in the rules to go into Yankee Stadium that you are not allowed to wear face paint.
Wow.
Now, they allow people to wear face paint. What had happened was the day before, somebody who had face paint on had caused a little bit of an issue. He was ejected from the stadium, but not arrested. He washed all the face paint off, came back into the stadium, got another ticket, came back into the stadium, and made a video about it. So that video went viral, and the Yankees were like, "We're not going to have people make fools of us." And that was the story, excuse me, on why I was not allowed to wear face paint in Yankee Stadium. Now, here it is. I'm going to New York today. I'm going to Citi Field. And are they going to let me in? I hope so. I'm going to be all painted up because when I had to wash this stuff off my face last time, I looked like a pink mess. I looked like I was about to have a heart attack because of just the way that my face looked after wiping all that stuff off.
Yeah.
And the last thing the guy told me before I went in there, he goes, "Please don't put it back on again because we will kick you out." And I'm like, "Listen, I don't keep it on me. So it's not like I can go back into the bathroom and start to put this back on again." So it was the back of my head, and my mohawk was still painted up. Just my face was not.
Okay, but with the Gatorade, let's just sum it up that keep it in-house. If it's between the players and coaches, it's fine, but it can't get out on anyone else, on the commentators, anyone else outside of the team. Once it does that, maybe action could be taken against, the Gatorade perpetrators.
So I know what you're talking about when the guys threw the Gatorade at, and they did.
It was hard, and they had to know it was done so carelessly.
That was the problem. That they just literally threw a whole, 5 gallons.
No
of
regard
Gatorade.
for the commentator who was standing there,
Or the electrical equipment and things like that. There's a lot of things that was done improperly with that. So that being said, the team did compensate her a little bit, and whatever television station there is. So there is some compensation for that when these types of things do happen. Obviously, there
are exceptions. If it's a broadcaster who's with you all the time, the players kind of consider the broadcaster in a way like a part of the team. I can understand that a little bit, in that case, maybe that'd be an exception. What do we have next, Pax, to move on? It's not a winning argument for me, so I'll move on.
So we're going to move on.
By the way, I did get a little uptight. The last time someone was on my lawn, I was getting a little uptight, but I kept it together and didn't say anything.
Well, as long as they didn't have a dog, or a dog. So I like the last question that you had. is the AFC West the most competitive division in all of sports right now?
Yeah, absolutely, Pags. What do you?
I disagree. I disagree completely. I feel that the AFC West, first off, they haven't played a game. So right now, I would have to say the NFC West, just by the way that they had everybody going on, like and everything happening, that was even a more competitive division than the AFC West was. Where, you know, like I said, had they tied, there would have been 3 teams that made it in. Because they didn't tie, they didn't, you know, there wasn't 3 teams. They have gotten the most amount of people. Obviously, that division is going to be one of the harder ones this season. That being said, they haven't played a game yet, and we don't know exactly how that's going to turn out.
NFC West has the Seattle Seahawks. How can they be the toughest one? The Seahawks are a declining team. They're basically rebuilding. Drew Lock is their quarterback. Geno Smith is their backup. They're not.
You have the Rams who won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You have the 49ers that went to the Super Bowl a couple of years prior and went to the conference championship. You have the Arizona Cardinals, who were a playoff team. Of course, they lost in the first round.
Down the stretch, and they don't even know what's going on with Kyler Murray.
Then you had Seattle, where he was hurt. You know, of course, he was hurt all season long. Their quarterback was hurt most of the season. So when he came back, they started to become more competitive again. But at that point, it was already too late. They weren't going to be able to get to 9 wins.
If it wasn't for Seattle, you'd have a good argument. You might have a winning argument. But because of Seattle, you have one very weak link in that division.
Yeah, but you had Denver last year that
has
stunk.
No chance of winning that division. But in the AFC West, all 4 teams can win that division. That's how competitive it is.
Right now.
Right now.
Last year they weren't that way.
Gonna fall. Yes, someone has to fall by the wayside. It's just that's the mathematical probability. Okay, not every team in the AFC West is going to be 12-5, 13-4, but you might have a scenario that'll be the opposite of what you had in the NFC East a couple of years ago, where no one had a winning record. You might have no one having a losing record in that division. The last place team might be at 9-8. That's how competitive it is. And there's so much hope out there for each team. We don't know how it's going. You have Kansas City, who's always powerful, who I imagine is going to go into the season being the favorite. And then you have the LA Chargers, a team who barely missed the playoffs, who are on a real upswing. A lot of people are high on the Chargers, that they think they can make a real Super Bowl run. Then you have Josh McDaniels going to the Raiders, who made the playoffs, and they've made, some nice pickups. And they're going to be considered a serious contender. And then you have Russell Wilson. Yeah, wow. Russell Wilson with the Denver Broncos, quarterback, and giving them all this hope. And the Broncos had a lot of nice pieces in place. Otherwise, they have a really good defense. They have real hopes of going to the Super Bowl themselves. So all 4 teams, someone is going to be very disappointed, but we don't know how it's going to go with those 4 teams. Anyone could be number 1, anyone could be number 4. But in your NFC West, we know Seattle's not going to finish in first place under any circumstance. I can't see them beating the Rams, the Niners, and Arizona out.
Well, no, and I agree with that, but that's so. And I also look at, first off, I think Denver, even with Russell Wilson, I think Russell Wilson is on the decline of his career. And I know more people are putting Denver up higher than I think they should be. Realistically, I still think Denver is the number 4 team. I think that the Raiders made some really bad mistakes. 1, getting rid of their coach. 2, getting rid of Mayock as their general manager. I feel like that they did well with those guys. Especially
Devontae Adams coming over from the Packers, so that's going to
be. And it's that we're going to see how well they can really do, and if they can get back to the playoffs. I still am not trusting the Chargers, but I know a lot more people are. They're saying Herbert is going to be the guy who kind of brings them there, and he has been that type of quarterback. However,
well,
he's
Khalil
gotta
Mack
make a big
is
leap.
gonna really might anchor their defense there.
Well, that's really the bigger story. Is their defense going to be able to handle and really, because I feel that although that Herbert is a good quarterback, there are ways to beat him, and he hasn't shown that he can handle a rush right up the gut. And until he starts to figure that out and get around that, he's still going to be.
I don't know
right
about
where
that, Pax. He's shown mobility. You know,
yeah, he has a little bit of mobility, but
knowing when to
that's
hit.
how you beat Herbert. You get him up the gut, and that because he's not as mobile. He's not as mobile as some of these other quarterbacks are that can run and pass. When you get his feet moving, he becomes a lot less accurate, and that's how you beat. That's how you beat San Diego, LA, the Chargers right now. So, and then you have Kansas City, who I think has fallen off because obviously they lost Tyreek Hill. That Sammy Watkins isn't there anymore. Who are they going to be throwing it to, and how are they going to be winning some of these games?
They drafted Sky Moore.
Well, yeah, and of course now he's got to pan out. So I mean, there's a lot that's going on, and there's still a lot of question marks. I mean, obviously, after doing some work and trying to figure out how feasible and possible it is possible that a whole division, because of the way the playoffs are set up now, that a whole division could make the playoffs.
Right, that's never been done before, to my knowledge.
Well, no, because there wasn't even the ability for that to happen. That you could have had three teams make it, but
have been known to get in, yeah,
right, but not 4. So now that they have the seventh wild card team, or the seventh team to get into the playoffs, you could, in theory, have an entire division make the playoffs. That being said, a lot of things have to fall into place for that to happen. So you would need the certain division you'd need to win a lot of the games and kind of beat each other up in the division so that every team was about 500 and that you won most of the crux of all of your other games, and then all the other divisions lost to the NFC counterparts. So whoever they played, and it's possible to make it happen. Not probable. Like I said, it's more possible for 3 teams to make it, but more likely than having 4 teams. I don't expect that they're going to have all 4 teams in the playoffs, and that's what would make it, to me, the most competitive. But throughout all of sports, I don't know. I just speaking of this, and you could probably speak more intelligently because you're a fan. I think that the AL East is more competitive. Where you have the Yankees, you have Tampa Bay, even though Tampa Bay is not good right this very second. I mean, they're only 2 years away from going to the World Series.
They haven't been bad this year. The last couple of games against the Yankees, they haven't scored and they've gotten shut down. But they're something like 6.5 behind the Yankees. But they've had a somewhat decent year to this point.
And then you have Boston, and then you have Toronto. Toronto obviously is not doing what they're supposed to be doing yet, but
yeah. And then Boston might come on, but then you have a weak link in the Baltimore Orioles who won't make
right. Yeah, so the Orioles, but again, you have all of those different teams, and you have one team that's not doing really well. But when they go up against their division, the Orioles do really well. I mean, it's the same way in the NL East. The NL East. You have Atlanta, who's supposed to be the cream of the crop. They just won the World Series, but they're not doing so hot. They're right around the same thing as the Phillies. The Phillies got all of this batting and still are under 500. You have the Mets, who took a big jump, but now their starters are hurt, and they're going to start to come down a little bit. And then you have the Marlins, in Washington, and the Marlins. And the Marlins, for whatever reason, always beat the Phillies. For some reason or another, just the Phillies cannot play. And I think it's as a whole, Philadelphia teams do not do well in the state of Florida. I don't know why. It's like even when the Flyers would go down and play the Panthers and the Lightning, they would come out of that most of the time 0-2. They would have lost both games. even when the Eagles went down there, the Eagles lost to the Dolphins, and the Dolphins weren't very good at that time. It's like, oh, we were just chalking it up as a win, and they lost. And luckily, it was obviously it was an out of conference game, so it didn't affect our playoff chances, and we wound up winning the rest of the games. It actually propelled us to win the rest of the games against the NL East, the NFC East, and get to the playoffs. And this was only in 2019 that I'm talking. So, when I think about divisions as a whole, like I said, first thing that comes right to my head is really the AL East. And again, just you have the Orioles that are the dreck of that division, but ultimately there's always going to be one that trails off. And I feel like Denver has been that team in the AFC West. The Denver has been the team. Now they got a quarterback now, but I don't think that makes a difference.
But I don't disagree with you. When I sit down and write my predictions, I don't know where I'm going to place Denver. I haven't fully analyzed it, but conceivably I will place them in last place in that division. But the point I'm trying to make with Russell Wilson coming on board, there's a buzz in Denver. There's a lot of excitement, more excitement than there's been since they won the Super Bowl some years back. So going into the season, that's the glamour division that we don't know how it's going to play out. A lot of people are going to pick Denver, if not to win the division, to at least make the playoffs. So there's an excitement. There's no weak link there at all. Every other division, I think you could find one weak link at least. Okay? But that's the one division where no one is projecting a weak link beforehand, but obviously some teams are going to do better than others. So one team is going to fall off and be disappointing. Who we thought was going to make the playoffs is actually going to maybe go 7-10.
Okay, I can believe that. That being said, and I'm going to segue to this question for you. Do you feel that? And so the Raiders are obviously there, and they have the Golden Knights, but Vegas getting sporting teams. Do you feel that it takes a very specific type of player to be able to play in a city like that, where we have so much other stuff going on that last year, with all of the distractions that were happening around the Raiders, where you had the one guy with the car accident, and then it's just one thing after another happened with that team. I don't look at this year as being any different. I feel like that there's going to be a tremendous amount of drama that comes involved with a team playing in Vegas. Now, the Golden Knights are a little different because they, when they bought that franchise, the NHL was not prepared as a whole, not prepared for how they were going to do the draft. And they chose a winning team, and they wound up going to the Stanley Cup because they didn't protect their team. The rest of the teams didn't protect their players the way they needed to. They obviously learned when Seattle got in there, because there wasn't, they knew, okay, well, we're not going to allow Seattle to just go to the Cup. We're not, all our high tier 2 players and our low tier 1 players, we're not going to give them the ability to get chosen. And that's kind of what, the Vegas was able to do. So the Knights, I feel like, and hockey players in general, are going to feel a little different. But of course, the Athletics are looking to try to move to Vegas, or somebody is going to try to get into Las Vegas for a baseball team.
Why the teams tried to move out of Oakland, Pax? The Oakland Raider fan base, my impression was they had one of the great fan bases in the NFL, yet they moved out of there. The Oakland Athletics, I can understand a little more, but that's been a franchise that's been in existence so long already. I mean, why can't Major League Baseball, if anything, just expand? I mean, why do they have to lose these teams from these storied franchises? Like the San Diego Chargers, why did they have to become the LA Chargers? Why does LA have to have 2 teams? And I shouldn't talk because New York has 2 teams. But that's been going on from the merger when the NFL absorbed the Jets. So it wasn't so the NFL had no choice but really to absorb the Jets when they had that merger. But I just don't see some of these franchises like, if anything, LA didn't really support the Rams the way they should. If anyone should lose a team, it should be that big market, the LA Rams.
And I was going to say, this is not the first time LA. At first, I mean, LA for a long time didn't even have a football team, and then certain times they had 2 football teams, and then it's the chance that the Rams have is that this is their house. It's like, really? I mean, that's your chant because you have to share your stadium with another team, and it's like, I don't understand it because obviously there is no Rams fan. When they showed the celebration after they won the Super Bowl, it was like you were looking at like 20 people on the street cheering. It was sad in comparison. Like, I didn't feel that the Rams deserved to have a home Super Bowl, let alone, just because of the fact that it's a brand new stadium, and I've been told that stadium, for as grandiose as it is a logistical nightmare, not only to get to, but then to get in. That if you want to watch a game there, you have to go to your seat about an hour and a half early because it takes that long because of just the way that it was constructed and the way things are in that stadium. And I find that that's interesting with everything that the way it is in this day and age to still have to, 90 minutes before a game to get to your seat. Wow. That's a little sad, and I think of the Raiders Stadium. When I went there to go to the Raiders Stadium and you are waiting in line to go to the bathroom, guys, long lines to the bathrooms, every bathroom. How is that possible? Why is that? How did you not know to get enough bathroom space? And just, of course, they race to get these things open. And of course, they're still going to be adding things. I'm sure by the time the Super Bowl happens in Vegas, that stadium is going to be a lot different than it is right now. But that all being said, I'm just like, it's not poor planning and poor design on both accounts to have these types of issues. And of course, the new stadiums are the wave of the future. Everybody wants a new stadium now because they want to have the ability to host the Super Bowl. That the link is only about 24, 25 years old. Well, these stadiums really only
it's not worth it to put all your energy into a one and done event. That's why I've always been against having the Olympics at a certain city, because it comes at the expense of things that would help the public services like extra educational materials, teachers, books, extra firemen, extra policemen, because there's certain shortages as a result of what's in the budget, how many could get hired, because money's being spent on these things. What else do we have on the debate questions, Pags?
So the other ones that I saw, and I guess we'll ask this one because I was a little unsure whether I wanted to. The Dwayne Haskins incident, where they released all of the information and whether that was an appropriate thing to do. And I kind of agree with you here. So it's not really a debate. I don't feel that you need to. I don't feel that you need to beat a man after the fact. They could have done that privately. People that wanted to find out could have found out. It wasn't secretive. Some of the stuff that they reported as official was stuff that was heard anyways, that there was a woman in the car who was passed out. He did speak to his wife, so it wasn't like that this was
I don't even want to repeat specifics, but I somehow feel leave it alone. I mean, Dwayne Haskins tragically died. There was good feeling towards him, the way he was trying to turn his career around, and the people that knew him within the Steel organization seemed to be speaking very well of him as a person, and feeling he was working hard. And whatever caused, his tragic death, it's unfortunate, but it wasn't, it wasn't caused because Dwayne Haskins was attacking someone and the police had to storm in and shoot him because he wasn't going to, otherwise he would have killed someone else. It wasn't like that type of scenario. It was like, you know, he tragically died. Leave it alone. Like, you're right. Those very close to the situation, if they really wanted to find out information, perhaps they could have, and let them keep it to themselves, those close to him. I don't want to hear Dwayne Haskins' name dirtied at all after it happened. You know, it's a tragedy. A young man lost his life. We feel for him. We feel for his family, and, you know, and leave it alone after that. That's just my feeling. There's no need afterwards to come out that, you know, he may have had this, he may have had that. You know, it's somehow, as Pax, I get the feeling when someone dies tragically like that, we have a hard time accepting it. So it's as if we want to be given a reason to say, oh, there had to be a reason, because it just, you know, it's too painful to bear otherwise. You know?
Well, and I feel that people get jealous. You know, it's like that's really a little bit we're going to soil his name because he's getting the 15 minutes of fame. Even though, I mean, he was a football player, he did have a little bit of a checkered past just with everything that was going on in Washington. He tried to get himself back together again and was doing okay. And of course, then this tragedy occurs. I feel that you don't need to stomp on this guy's grave. You know what I mean? And there was no need to be able to do that. I felt that when they said that everything was official, I think that everybody knew kind of what was going on in the first place. It just, again, it was starting to badmouth, you know, somebody, a tragic situation. And all it's doing is hurting the family. Here it is that the family is the one that's affected because they're still around, you know. And, you know, I don't know if he had kids or, you know, what his story was.
Yeah, I don't even know. I just basically, as a matter of policy, something happens. And listen, I can also understand sometimes if someone, you know, dies in a car accident and they were going 125 miles an hour. I'm not against that getting reported, because that could be used as an educational thing to help someone else, perhaps. So they see how dangerous speeding is. You know, it's like, don't speed like that behind the wheel. If it's used educationally, maybe to help someone, even Dwayne Haskins would have wanted someone else, I'm sure, to learn from any mistakes he may have made if it could have helped someone else. But to just dirty a guy's name, I don't like it. If it's done in a way it could help, you know, then okay. But
right. And although, like Rick was talking about, a teaching moment for the youth, actually, I look at it as more of a teaching moment for the players in the NFL. That we're hearing too often that these guys are, you know, they have a phone number that all they have to do is call, and they will get picked up, and from wherever they're at. It doesn't matter where in the world they are. They will have a car come get them, so that they don't need to do these types of things. These tragedies are senseless, and they don't need to have happen. And that's what is the teaching moment I feel in this, beyond everything else. Like I said, I don't think that you need to soil a guy's name to make that happen, to teach that moment. I feel that you should be able to, you know, that you should get some teaching out of it, not necessarily at the expense of the guys, you know, whose tragedy occurred.
Yeah.
So going to the next thing on this, because I had to look this up. I had no idea, because of course I don't follow the Yankees, being from Philadelphia, but there was a 1-game suspension that was given to Josh Donaldson, and I'm gonna defer to you on, because like I said, I looked it up and I Googled it to find out kind of what had happened. And I want to hear what your thoughts are, because I read what I read, and obviously what I read had a.
Well, you've heard about it, Pax. You didn't see the game; it wasn't telecast in Philly, but It was New York. Yeah.
So I'd rather hear from you first, because, like I said, I only read, you know, with a New York spin to it. So I wanted to hear what you had to say first.
Yeah, Josh Donaldson was suspended for 1 game from Major League Baseball. He made some remarks to Tim Anderson that supposedly set something off. Tim Anderson, the great shortstop of the Chicago White Sox. But there's more to it than that. Let me be upfront about it. Josh Donaldson has acted like a jerk throughout his career, complete jerk. So it's hard to defend a guy like that. Okay. But with that said, I don't think Major League Baseball suspending him one game did something that was fair. It wasn't fair. It was convenient for Major League Baseball. One game, Josh Donaldson's appealing it, and I think maybe they were hoping he wouldn't appeal it, figuring, okay, it's only one game. Let me get it out of the way. It's kind of like a slap on the wrist they're showing. You see, we're doing something. We're taking action. This goes back a while ago. Josh Donaldson had made a comment last year about major league pitchers putting extra spin on the balls, doing something maybe illegal against the rules. Well, Josh Donaldson, when he was with the Twins, after they played the White Sox, he hit a home run. As soon as he crossed home plate, he yelled something out. To me, it was clearly taunting of the pitcher, acting in a certain way, even though he didn't look at the pitcher. And it was noticed, and the pitcher, Rendon on the White Sox, made a remark that Josh Donaldson is basically like a pain in the behind. And if Josh Donaldson doesn't like anything about him, he should come and talk to him about it, meaning, have a discussion. So it was just a generic talk. So Josh Donaldson did a complete no-no. He enters the White Sox locker room back there to talk to the pitcher. And it could have set something off, but it didn't. And then Donaldson left. He says, I came to him. He didn't do anything about it, as if to make a remark. He didn't fight me. He backed down. So right there, the White Sox hated Donaldson's guts, and it got worse. He slid into Tim Anderson in a way that Anderson deemed was too hard. A place to tag on Anderson that was too hard. And they nearly came to blows during the game, but nothing happened of it. Now there are a lot of hard feelings towards Donaldson. Now he's on base, on second base. Anderson's at shortstop, and he's calling him Jackie, in reference to Jackie Robinson. Donaldson claims it's a 2019 story in which Anderson said he wants to be the next Jackie Robinson and why and blah, blah, blah. Which to me, I'm going to get to that. I think that was inappropriate for Anderson, the way he, is comparing himself. But the point is, Anderson, I guess, took offense to it, didn't say anything. Donaldson says he said that to Anderson before in the past. But obviously the relationship changed from when that story came out in 2019 with Anderson comparing him to Robinson. It was in Sports Illustrated. So now Donaldson comes up to home plate. The hit. The catcher gets up and gets right in Donaldson's face to tell him off. Makes a whole big scene. Donaldson, to his credit, kept his cool. He didn't respond. When the catcher gets up in Donaldson's face, Donaldson's now responding. Tim Anderson runs in from shortstop and has to get held back. Get held back about what? Donaldson's not hyper at this point. He's not looking to fight. So Anderson's carried in. Tony La Russa now, who, if you look at his background, it's not that nice. He plays the race card. He says it was racial on Donaldson's part. And of course, when you play the race card, everyone gets all uptight. And, Major League Baseball is uptight. Now they're on the defensive because the race card was played. Because Donaldson called Anderson Jackie. If anything, that's a compliment to me. But Donaldson's a jerk. Let's not get away from that. He's a complete jerk the way he's acted. And he was a jerk for saying that to Anderson. Knowing Anderson is ticked at him, you don't joke around with a guy who's really ticked off at you. You just don't do it. So Donaldson was absolutely at fault there. But both teams look like they're going to have a melee, but Donaldson's calm. Had Donaldson started to act like he was going to fight, the White Sox would have responded because Donaldson kept it together. Nothing happened. I mean, nothing happened beyond them coming to the plate in the near scuffle. So Major League Baseball looks into it, and Donaldson denies the racial part of it, mentioning it was an inside joke between the two. They suspend Donaldson one game, saying regardless of his intent, it helped set off the melee. But it wasn't, but the melee was set off because of Donaldson's behavior from the year before. It had been building up. And as far as Anderson goes, keep this in mind. Wasn't this the same Tim Anderson who had gotten suspended for 2 games for bumping an umpire one time, and he got suspended for 1 game another time? So, and keep this in mind about the great Jackie Robinson. What made Jackie Robinson so great and special? What wasn't just the great player he was. Maybe Anderson can match his performance on the field. Maybe, okay? He's certainly doing a good job of it to this point. But Jackie Robinson had guts, thick skin. He wanted to fight back in the worst way when he went through all this racial abuse. He wanted to fight back so badly, but he promised Branch Rickey he was going to keep it together, because fighting back in that era at that point could have backfired, him being the first African-American. And look at the way Anderson loses his cool all the time. Jackie Robinson was able to contain himself. He had that type of character. Anderson could have handled it a different way. He could have responded a different way. So, but basically, Major League Baseball, they gave Donaldson a 1-game suspension because it was convenient, not fair.
So, and I kind of agree with what Rick was saying here, that there's a difference between being racist and being racially motivated and being just a straight, horse's ass. And that's kind of the difference. That's kind of the difference, that this was a part of gamesmanship that went over the line, and it was brought on by the one guy who said that, hey, I look at myself as trying to be to emulate Jackie Robinson. At least that's from what I gathered, from the interview, that not that he is Jackie Robinson or that even his play mimics that he wants to emulate the aura of Jackie Robinson, and that's, I can appreciate that. That being said, I mean, this is a gamesmanship. It's like, in a previous life, people wouldn't call me Pags because I didn't like it, because it was what they called me in boot camp. I hated being called Pags because it brought me back to when I'm in boot camp and all the push-ups and sit-ups I had to do because of, when the company commander would be like, what's up, Pags? You know what I mean? Like, drop, you know what I mean? And it just always, when I hear Pags, I feel like the next word is drop. So, because I was, like say, when you're being indoctrinated in boot camp, and you got a little bit of a mouth on you, you sometimes, have to do a lot of push-ups, which is something that I had to do. But ultimately, you get over it. You start to move beyond that. It sounds like that these two had a history beforehand. The fact that only one person was suspended out of all this, I felt was improper. The fact that he is pushing it now and saying, okay, well, we're going to make this a little bit more of a story because I want to appeal my 1-game suspension because it's to clear the fact that I'm not a racist, that I'm just an ass.
He apologized to the Robinson family, Donald.
He did.
There was any need to do it because I don't think anything was along racial lines that he said was negative.
Right, and I think that was part of the problem. But again, you said it right. La Russa is the problem. He is the issue. He thinks that he invented baseball, and I can't stand him as a person. I can't stand him as a coach. I cannot wait for him to go. Because I have my own personal feelings about that guy. Again, somebody who thinks that he's bigger than the game bothers me, and it doesn't matter the game. It's obviously you didn't invent this game. You weren't around, and I'm just tired of you in general. So, and on that note, that's how we're going to close out our show. So 2 hours went by, even though I got the first 5 minutes on my own. It's probably where I got to speak the most because
and there's no one like Mac Pags. But if I couldn't have Mac here for the show, I mean, I'm thrilled to do this show with you.
I'm glad to be pinch hitting at least 300. So
yeah, you're there. We go. Hits. Yeah, you're producing.
Perfect. So everybody, hopefully we will have Mac back tomorrow. If not, he will get a hold of me and I will be back on the show. Of course, they do their Sunday special with Jim Jeffcoat, and you'll still see me anyways because I usually show up around 9 o'clock to do my part. So everybody have a great Saturday, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow. Have a great day.